Welcome to Web3 Buzz, where we talk products, communities, and careers in Web3. Every week, we bring awesome people from the Web3 world and talk about what they're building and how they're disrupting products and communities with innovation and inclusivity. Hi, Terry. Welcome to Web3 Buzz, and thank you for coming onto the show today.
Hey, thanks for hosting. Excited to be here.
Terry, can you introduce yourself to the audience? Maybe go over your professional background and journey in crypto and what you were doing before founding Taiga and Tapio.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Terry. I'm the co-founder of Nuts Finance. So a lot of people may not know, but Tapio and Taiga is actually one of the projects that we built under the Nuts Finance umbrella. So I can talk a little bit about Nuts Finance first and then go directly into Tapio and Taiga. So we basically started Nuts Finance back in early 2018. And, at the time, our vision was to utilize, blockchain to enable an open financial ecosystem, which, this is still our vision. But, back in 2018, we were pretty clear on the fact that, this was going to be a multi-year and multi-project approach. So that's why we set up this sort of development company or DAO to carry out these initiatives. So one of the first projects that we actually built towards the end of 2018 was a middleware platform. It was a developer's tooling solution, mainly geared towards developers, because at the time we thought that modularizing a lot of the financial concepts such as accounts payable, accounts receivables, and putting them into a middleware would allow developers to issue financial dApps much more conveniently as well as securely. So this was the first product that we launched. And then the second product that we launched was a BTC DeFi solution. And then, this product basically enabled us to understand, how to launch something to the crypto community. Whereas the first one was more of a product that got our feet wet in building on top of Ethereum. So both are super valuable, which lead us up to, Tapio and Taiga, which is a synthetic asset solution on Polkadot. So this is kind of like the background story of how we sort of got started. We started on Ethereum, building on Ethereum, and then transitioned ourselves over to the Polkadot ecosystem. And then, as of my personal background and experience, I come from traditional finance. I was with a credit rating agency, out of college. And then after that, I actually founded my first startup, which was an FX brokerage. We sold the business in 2018, so early 2018. And that was actually the opportunity that, opened up crypto for me, because at the time a lot of our users were actually asking for crypto trading pairs towards like the end of 2017, early 2018. So that was how it sort of like led me down the crypto rabbit hole. So that's my experience and what we're building here.
Interesting. So you said that you started Nuts Finance and several of those projects were on the Ethereum blockchain, and you moved to Polkadot in 2021. So this is a huge decision for the team from a technical, strategic, and business standpoint. Can you explain the rationale behind it?
Yeah, definitely. So again, right, going back to sort of the vision of our development team or principles is, number one, we're chain agnostic. So we're open to building products, in different networks. But obviously there are certain parameters that would need to fulfill in order for us to commit the resources and actually build. So there's a few reasons why we decided to shift gears into Polkadot. Number one was, as I mentioned, the previous products that we built. One of a parachain's team, founder, actually took a look into some of the stuff that we built in the past and said, "Oh my God, like, your solution could actually help solve a pretty major problem in the Polkadot ecosystem." So that was what started everything. That was the sort of the spark plug to us, exploring into the Polkadot ecosystem. So this was at the start of 2021. So our journey actually started off with just talking directly to Web3 Foundation, and understanding, and then as well, ourselves as builders understanding the architecture as well as the technical stack of Polkadot. And then basically it became more clear that Polkadot was actually was a really strong network, not just from a technical perspective, but also from a builder community ecosystem standpoint. Because one of the things that we did was we actually spoke with a few early parachain teams, one of them being Akala. And during this process of interacting with them and collaborating with them, we actually saw the amount of support and synergy between the two teams. So this is actually one of the factors where we decided to shift most of our resources to the Polkadot ecosystem, just because of the amount of positive support that we're able to receive from the ecosystem itself. So this was something that I would say was definitely more rare to come by when building on the Ethereum network. Obviously, the Ethereum community is big. I guess they don't have the necessary resources to cater to every single project. But then in short, right, I just feel like we are receiving the amount of attention as well as support from the right group of people in the Polkadot ecosystem. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, kind of long-winded, but ultimately it comes down to, number one, us being chain agnostic. Number two, the amount of support the ecosystem is able to provide. And number three is, the network itself, is superior, or it's something that we foresee coming out in the long run.
That totally makes sense. Can you explain the mission, vision, and value proposition of Taiga and Tapio?
Yep. So let me maybe dial back a little bit. So Tapio is the synthetic asset protocol on Polkadot, and then Taiga is the sister project on Kusama. I guess the problem, right? Like I'm gonna probably dissect this question this way, and I'm gonna explain what the problem that we see, and how we believe Tapio and Taiga can solve it. So the problem that we see in Polkadot or Kusama ecosystem is that there are many different versions of an asset. Given the fact that it's a parachain setting, we're already seeing that play out. So, for example, for the DOT asset class, there are different versions. There's DOT, there's liquid staking DOT, and then there's crowd loan DOT, and then Akala has introduced like liquid crowd loan DOT as well. So this is like already 4 versions. Pretty similar situation with the KSM asset as well. So what this is going to cause, like the potential problems that this is going to cause, is definitely liquidity silos, meaning that some of the DOT liquidity that's parked in, for example, staking application or crowd loan application cannot be freely flown to the application level and cannot be unleashed, to other parachains. So that kind of holds back the economic scale of the projects that are building on top of the different parachains. So this was the problem that we sort of identified and hypothesized early in the year. At the time, there weren't that many different versions of like liquid staking or liquid crowd loan yet, but we were seeing that like being played out as the Polkadot ecosystem is continuing to develop. So how we feel Tapio and Taiga can help solve this is through a synthetic asset solution. Okay, meaning that from a user's point of view, whether you are holding a liquid staking DOT or a liquid crowd DOT or just DOT in itself, you can use those as underlyings to mint a synthetic DOT. So in our case, it's going to be called TAP DOT, TAP DOT. So the benefits of having TAP DOT is, number one, it unleashes, the liquidity, which are currently sort of like locked up in the underlying use case. And the second benefit is that not only does it unleash the liquidity, but you can also, from a user's point of view, retain the existing sort of yield or rewards that you would normally get. So you're not sacrificing the yield and rewards for use cases. Okay. And then number three is basically, with a sort of standardized version of synthetic DOT, applications that are on top of a parachain or, applications that are on top of parachains would only need to support one single standard. So they don't need to necessarily support all the standards. And that basically is our solution to solving the liquidity silos and fragmentation issue. And then, obviously similar situation mimics on the Taiga side, which takes care of KSM. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very clear answer. Yeah. And just wondering, what is your rough estimate of the total addressable market or the market size that you're looking at this opportunity?
That's a good question. So I don't think I have like a specific number for you, but what I can share with you is with the Taiga and Tapio project, like the target users that we are looking to serve. So there's a couple. Number one is definitely parachains itself. So because we are not a parachain, we are a protocol. So one of our objectives or metric is to integrate into different parachains that would have a need to solve for the liquidity side of issues. Okay. Number two, besides parachains, the second group of users that we are targeting are traders. Okay, so trader in the sense of people that needs to exchange between the different versions of DOTs or KSM. So for example, if somebody's holding LC DOT and they need to exchange it into DOT, they could basically utilize our stable swap engine. Because ultimately, so one thing I want to clarify here is that the synthetic asset solution that we are introducing, and at the core, it's actually powered by a stable swap engine. So meaning that there are pools of uniform assets, and in uniform assets, what we mean by that is assets that share a similar value. So whether that is DOT, LC DOT, liquid staking DOT, these assets share similar value. So they're stored in this pool. But what that allows is to empower traders to have a much more efficient and low slippage trading experience between assets that shares a similar value peg. So traders is our second group, and then the third group is actually projects. Okay, so as I mentioned, one of the things that having a synthetic asset solution helps is, parachains or the applications would only need to support a single standard of liquidity. So gathering that, not being fragmented. But at the same time, what we're introducing is a liquidity renting sort of mechanism. And for this feature, what we're hoping to do is that we understand that there's a lot of mercenary liquidity that flows from projects to projects, because obviously with the mining rewards that projects are giving out. However, as we all know, by now, these liquidity are pretty much temporary or transitory. So from a project's point of view, it's actually quite expensive or inefficient for them to bootstrap liquidity from the start if they needed to sort of have a pool, like have a LP pool between the project's native token and, let's say, versus DOT, or the project's native token versus KSM. So the solution that we're providing here, the rental liquidity feature that we're providing here, is that for users that are holding synthetics, so the Tapio DOT, for example, if, let's say, they don't have a need to send it to other parachains, or they don't have a need to further collateralize it to borrow stablecoins against it, what they can do is they can contribute that synthetic liquidity back into a common pool, and this common pool ultimately can be rented out to project teams that needs the liquidity. Obviously, this is a mechanism that also brings together the tokenomics for Tapio as well as Taiga, but ultimately, the third user group that we're looking to help or serve are project teams, because we understand that for every project, they want to provide their traders or their users the best possible experience with ample liquidity, and without forking up tons of their own project token, they can actually rent it from our synthetic liquidity pool. So these are basically the three main user group. But then going back to your questions in terms of numbers, it's difficult for me to give you an accurate number right now in terms of how many users we're looking to solve. But what I can say is, whether you're a project team, whether you're a trader, or whether you're a parachain that is building in the Polkadot or the Kusama ecosystem, you are within our radar of target audience.
That's very interesting. That's definitely a huge user base, and it also covers, I think, like a B2B and B2C kind of scenario as well, where you're catering to the end users as well as other projects as well.
Correct.
If TAI USD consists of, for example, three underlying assets, USDT, USDC, and let's say KUSD, do I need to hold all the three assets to mint TAI KSM? How does it work?
No. So you can contribute either one of the asset to the stablecoin pool, and then you would be able to get TAI USD in return. So that's you don't need all three compositions to mint. That's based. So basically, this POI, as I explained a little bit earlier, is basically a stable swap mechanism. However, the difference between this stable swap mechanism versus the popular curve stable swap is that what gets produced is a synthetic asset versus an LP token.
Got it. So, but my exposure still is to the other assets as well, right? For example,
Correct.
If I have 2-3 assets, if the constituent assets are 2-3 assets of BTC, 2-3 versions of BTC or something, then I still have exposure, although I have invested, although I have provided liquidity only for one version, I still have exposure to the other two as well.
Correct.
Got it. And how is the price of the synthetic derived? I was just wondering, like for example, one of the asset is for the stable coin, it's 0.92. For the other one is like 1.1 and the other one is 1. So how is the overall asset of maybe Thai USD derived and how is it stable?
Yeah, so the stable swap algorithm, we actually took inspiration from curves. However, one thing that we've actually changed is the amplification coefficient. So what we've done is we have expanded the range so that for assets that share a similar value peg, there's a wider range for these assets to trade alongside each other. So this is one of the mechanisms that we've ran models to backtest. In terms of like determining the price, it's basically according to the stable swap formula as well. But I guess one of the best ways to answer this question is we're actually currently live on the testnet for Mandala. So so basically what users can do is they can go into the Mandala testnet and try to mint the mint Thai KSM using LKSM or KSM, and then basically the ratio is actually displayed directly on the app for users who have who wishes to understand around the mechanism.
So let's consider an example user flow, right? Let's say I staked KSM through Karura liquid staking and got the LKSM derivative token. Now I take the LKSM token and pair it with the original KSM to provide liquidity to, let's say, Taiga's stable asset pools. Now I'm trying to understand, maybe you can explain this to the listeners. What are the benefits of doing this over directly LPing LKSM in Karura? Because there also I will be able to collateralize for a self-service loan to get KUSD stablecoin. And once XCMP is established between other parachains, I will be able to move my LKSM to other parachains and maybe earn additional yield as well. So can you explain like what is different by kind of putting my LKSM in the Taiga's pools instead?
Yeah, definitely. So definitely one of the benefits, so there's a few. Number one is holding or using the Thai KSM. There's rewards, there's Thai rewards that gets distributed to users. Number two is, as I mentioned, for users that, let's say, don't have a need to collateralize Thai KSM, what they can do is they can contribute Thai KSM back into the common pool that gets rented out to project teams that needs Thai KSM liquidity. So through this process, because once the liquidity gets rented out to the project teams, there will be trading fees collected on those rented out KSM liquidity. So that fees gets back to the users that are contributing Thai KSM. So this is like an additional way for Thai KSM holders to get additional yield from the liquidity rental mechanism. So those are, I would say, currently, the two main benefits of holding the synthetics. But then also one that is, in the pipeline is, as we're continuing to build, is to find, more use cases for Thai KSM. So what that means is, one of the reasons why we are starting off, building on top of Akala as well as Karura is because they've got the DeFi primitives built out already. So it makes sense for us to, So it makes sense for us to deploy on top, in their stack and integrate with their financial applications directly. But then, as we sort of foresee, how the Polkadot environment or the Kusama environment is going to play out, there would be application-specific chains that gets built out, whether it's a GameFi chain or a privacy chain. So those would actually might have a need for liquidity to move across, a standardized liquidity to move across. So that's where also holding like Thai KSM, could be beneficial, down the road.
So in the perspective of rewards, you're saying that the liquidity provider gets a portion of the trading fee on the stable swaps, and they also get the Thai KSM synthetic asset instead of an LP token. And holding the Thai KSM also generates rewards in addition to the trading fees. Yes,
correct.
Got it. You mentioned something very interesting about renting liquidity to project teams. I'm just trying to contrast that to this new concept that is in DeFi right now, which is called protocol-owned liquidity, right? It has become quite popular in the DeFi 2.0 scenario. So do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how do they contrast with each other? Because both of them, I think the value proposition that I'm understanding is both of them are trying to solve the mercenary liquidity issues. What would you say on that?
So I think it's two different models. One is pretty much like debt based, and then the other one is through sort of like a rent model. Depending on the tokenomics of the project, I wouldn't say like all the projects are fit for the debt based model. And when designing the tokenomics for Tapio as well as Taiga, what we ultimately are looking to address is, find as many use cases as possible for the synthetic asset. So for us, naturally, it's actually more suitable for us to use the rental model rather than the debt, the debt approach. I would say, both models, if applied correctly, right, like they would address the mercenary like liquidity problem. We're actually seeing the success of some successful use cases under both models. So for us, on the Polkadot or Kusama ecosystem, right now there isn't a protocol that offers a similar approach. Because applications are still building out and there aren't as many protocol specific teams. So that's why we see that having this rental liquidity pool or common liquidity available starting out from early could sort of help us sort of bootstrap that use case for the synthetic as well. And it's definitely something that I believe to be a mainstay use case for each like ecosystem. It's similar to how like decentralized exchanges are a mainstay in every ecosystem. So we're kind of with our synthetic, we're actually trying to wear that hat as well.
That makes sense. So in future, when Taiga is integrated with other parachains, even Tapio, so different forms of derivatives, like for example, in Bifrost, there is VSKSM, or in case of DOT, like you mentioned, LC DOT on Akala, there is C DOT on Parallel Finance, and there are so many different types of DOT. So all of these will be supported by your dApp. Is that correct?
That's the goal, yes.
Great. Yeah. And what other assets are you planning to bring in the future?
So the roadmap looks like this currently. On the Kusama side, definitely the first asset is Thai KSM. It's going to be followed by the stablecoin, and we are also evaluating whether there's going to be enough BTC liquidity in the that gets flowed through to the Kusama ecosystem. So that's sort of the roadmap for Taiga in terms of synthetics that we're going to be rolling out. And on the Polkadot side, the first asset that we will be launching, the first synthetic asset would be Tapio Dot, followed by Tapio USD, and then looking at potentially again Tapio BTC. These are the so on the BTC side, we feel like obviously um, there should be more liquidity flowing through to the Polkadot side versus Kusama, but that's something that we still have to evaluate. So that's sort of the roadmap.
Great. Which protocols do you think are solving a similar problem? Maybe in Dotsama, you said in Dotsama it's the first, but outside, you said there are some similarities with Curve. So is there anything else that you know of that's solving a similar problem? Maybe contrast if you know any of that.
So I would say it's a mix of a few projects, or well-known projects that are trying to solve for trying to unleash liquidity, right? One of them is, I would say, like Lido Finance, because ultimately what they're doing is they're unleashing liquidity for the staked assets. They're doing that, and then for Curve, obviously, they're solving for the swap issue, the swap between assets that share a similar value peg. And then for us, and then around the mercenary liquidity issue, obviously there's like OHM, Olympus, as well as the Taiga project that are solving for the mercenary liquidity. So it's a hybrid, okay, I would say. Like if for somebody that's like well versed into DeFi, like those three are probably, the core features of those three are probably, what I would say encompasses what we're trying to do here at Taiga and Tapio. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yes. So what I understand is that, the differentiator of Taiga and Tapio is that it encompasses a lot of these use cases into one protocol, and it also focuses a lot more on the Dotsama ecosystem.
That's correct, yes.
I think one of the hot topics right now is the Curve liquidity wars, right? If you're aware of it, Curve stablecoin AMM, they reward their liquidity providers with Curve, and those rewards are kind of allocated to different Curve pools, but those rewards can be influenced by the vote allocation that they get through Curve, by voting through Curve. So a so-called war has ensued between various protocols trying to kind of gather as many votes as possible, and everyone is kind of hoarding Curve right now, and one of the biggest holder is, I think, Convex Finance. So similarly, a lot of other stablecoin providers like MIM, Olympus are trying to get hold of a lot of Curve, right? So because you said like your protocol can also be used to rent liquidity, and one of the ways to do that is to stake the TAI token. So do you expect something like this to happen on your platform as well? Because I see some kind of a demand for TAI token in that way.
Potentially, yes, definitely. So one of the things, like, so besides this, war issue, right, one of the things that I would say, Curve Protocol has done really well is designing the tokenomics for the CRV token, introducing the VECRV. That's like something that obviously can lock up, quite a bit of liquidity, and how the VECRV can actually be used to dictate how, rewards are being paid out. For us, we will be introducing a similar sort of voting or gauge mechanism with TAI token as well. However, how it actually would play out really depends on, how many protocols, or how many protocols gets built in the ecosystem. To be completely frank, like if we're the only ones that are working around in this space, then the situation would less likely resemble to what's currently happening on the Ethereum side of things. So I would say there's definitely this potential, but for us, we are anticipating something similar, where we would need to introduce the voting like the VE like TIE or the VE tap as a form of our tokenomics.
That's very interesting. So you're also planning those kind of VE kind of variations, is what you're saying?
Yes, but it's not necessarily to foster these liquidity wars, right? But it's more so from a tokenomics standpoint, having users to lock up their tokens so then they can actually participate in governance. We feel there's a lot of value to that, and then also locking up the tokens and then giving them the rights to make decisions around what projects gets listed that could qualify to rent liquidity from the common pool. That is also something that where the V tokens can help facilitate. So not what I'm saying is we designed this not because we want to brew up like or foster wars, but like more so it's actual use case of the features of our protocol. Sure.
Yeah, makes sense. I think one of the reasons why Curve is attractive, besides like what you said about the tokenomics, I think one of the reasons is the high yield that it generates on their stable coins. And I think that is achieved by providing using the provided liquidity in protocols like Aave and Compound to earn additional interest or additional yield. So do you see any potential such strategies to be implemented here as well for Tapio and Taiga?
So if I'm understanding correctly, like for example, if there's like a lending protocol on Polkadot or Kusama, users contributing liquidity to this lending protocol could take the LP token and we basically support the LP token as a constituent to mint this synthetic. Was that the question?
Yes, that is also one way. But the other thing I was thinking about was whatever liquidity has been provided into the pools, can that liquidity be further used instead of just sitting idle? Maybe that liquidity can be used in lending protocols to generate additional interest.
Absolutely. This is actually something that, again, right, the core metric, the key metrics that we are working towards is to find use cases for the synthetics. So that is definitely a potential. Ultimately, I think it comes down to, how, it's I would say it's a partnership / BD effort, as well as how much liquidity is locked up in the existing pool for the synthetics. That gets determined, whether it's widely adopted. But as I mentioned, right, like one of the first things that we decided to do was to build on top of Akala as well as Karua, because they have the DeFi primitives built out. They have an existing user base where we could leverage, the user as well as the existing liquidity to sort of help us bootstrap, so then we can sort of present the synthetic to other parachains as well as other applications and show them, hey, this is something that already works, and it's much easier for you guys to adopt. And if there's ways for us to get additional yield on the synthetic, that would even prove to be a stronger use case for holding the synthetic asset.
Awesome. What are your primary growth metrics by which you're evaluating success? One you said is, of course, TVL, and the other, I assume, is trading volumes because you have a stable swap. And do you have any other metrics? And do you have any targets in mind for this year of where you want to be?
So everything that we're doing right now is we're actually gauging, the activities in the sort of Polkadot Kusama ecosystem. For Polkadot, obviously still relatively early, but then for Kusama, we're actually already seeing usage, and we're seeing numbers. So I don't as of right now, I don't have like numbers to share in terms of like how, what we want to hit in terms of like protocol revenues or in terms of TVL. But obviously, for us, we believe, like according to the economic scale between Polkadot and Kusama, a scale of by a magnitude of 10 times is what we're expecting. So, for example, if the KSM liquidity, if the Thai KSM that gets minted with Taiga is in the 100 million range, we would expect something in the billion range for Tapio dot. So that is sort of like the framework or guide, or I don't want to say guideline, but framework that we are modeling our metrics or growth. And then I would say, like, besides just TVLs and like protocol fees, one thing that is also very interesting should be how the utilization rate of the liquidity. Okay, so how well is the liquidity that gets contributed to the pool is being utilized, and how that is being measured is obviously through swap scenarios, right? So whether the user is looking to swap in between different versions of KSMs or different versions of DOT, that's being measured. That's also a metric, because obviously Curve is also utilizing that as a way, as an indicator of how efficient or how popular a particular pool is. But that's also the liquidity utilization rate is also corresponds to how much liquidity there are. But then for us, ultimately what we're trying to do is we don't want to have a pool that's in, let's say, the $100 million range, but then only turns over 1 to 2% on a trading volume basis. So what we also encompass into the liquidity utilization is basically how what if the liquidity gets rented out, that also adds to the utility of the underlying contributed liquidity. So all in all, right, I would say these are the different frameworks that we have in mind before we can actually just say, we want to hit certain numbers of TVL, or we want to hit certain numbers of protocol revenue.
Totally makes sense. And can you explain the governance tokens utility, Tai?
So there's a few. Number one, obviously, is it's used to vote. Okay, so it's used to decide on the different parameter settings, fee, the swap fees, what type of assets should we roll out next, as well as what type of projects can be listed to potentially benefit from the rental liquidity mechanism. The second utility of TAI is it's actually so there's a buyback mechanism where a portion of the protocol fees that gets generated is used to purchase TAI on the open market. These TAI tokens is then contributed back into the community treasury, which is used to incentivize existing TAI stakers. So this is a way where we can actually, without depleting our own TAI tokens, to continuously, provide incentives for people who are staking, we can leverage sort of the existing protocol revenues to make it self-sustaining. So this is the second utility. And then the third utility, of TAI token is obviously to bootstrap initial usage, right? So this is where, to your earlier question, like, what's the benefit of holding TAI KSM versus LKSM? Because it seems like, they're both getting the underlying rewards. The third usage is to reward synthetic asset, holders as well as users.
Sure. In crypto, community is very critical, right? So you are not only focusing on the end users, but you're also focusing on the B2B side, which is like you're catering to other projects as well. So there are two things that are critical here for you. I think one is community and the other one is the ecosystem of projects, right? So what is your strategy to foster a great community and an ecosystem around you?
Yeah, so I would say definitely, initially, right, like building out or bootstrapping that community is something that we spent a lot of time designing, and also going back to one of the strategic decisions that we made when we started building was to build a protocol versus building a parachain. So the benefit of that is that, building on top of protocols, you're actually able to leverage a lot off of the existing parachains community. So in our case, it was Akala as well as, for Taiga as Karura. We're able to leverage off of Karura's existing community. So that as the first step. Step number two is, from that community, how do we identify, product champions as well as the power users? So this is something that we are experimenting right now, because we're actually running a airdrop incentive program where, we will require the community members to perform some small tasks, as well as, for users that have used the Karura DeFi applications previously, they would be, benefited, because of their previous participation. So from here, we can potentially find, the product champions as well as the power users, where we can, spread this type of strategy across different parachains. So this is sort of like our framework to bootstrapping as well as building out the community initially.
Sure. Any strategy on the partnerships? Did you have any partnerships in pipeline or any established ones currently?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not sure if I could share on this podcast, but obviously, integrating into Akala as well as Karura was the first step in reaching out to the Polkadot Kusama ecosystem. But what we've been working on is we're also talking to other parachain teams. Really understand. So because, our solution is a substrate palette. So one of the parachain teams that would be most suitable for us to work with initially are actually substrate that are building substrate palettes as well. So these are the people that we're talking to and building out that pipeline. I don't want to drop any names
Sure.
yet, but it's definitely something that we're working towards.
Sure, totally understand. So what are your next immediate milestones that have been planned, and maybe if you can share what is on your roadmap for the next quarter to 6 months?
Yeah, so immediate milestones is, so we'll be wrapping up the community event in a couple of days, and then shortly after that we will be launching on the Karura mainnet, because right now it's still on the testnet. So once that is done, we would be going through a liquidity migration period where we migrate the existing LKSM and KSM liquidity from Karura onto Taiga. So these are the immediate sort of milestones that is in the pipeline. And from a 3 to 6 months point of view, definitely launching on Polkadot as well. So that's the Akala integration, as well as we're trying to integrate into another parachains within 3 to 6 months, I would say. We're actually going through the initial documentation around integration with the other parachain. And then there's one more initiative that we are currently exploring, which is exploring the idea of integrating with the assets that gets bridged over from Wormhole. So this is also something that's in the pipeline, and this is something I could share because obviously Wormhole has made it pretty explicit that they're looking into the Polkadot ecosystem. But for us, we would serve as sort of the window to onboard those liquidity across.
Great. Those are some exciting initiatives. Thanks, Terry, for coming on to the show. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure the audience got a lot of insights from this.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for hosting, and look forward to coming back and share more updates and development with you guys.
Thank you for tuning into Web3 Buzz. Follow me at Web3 Alpha Buzz on Twitter, where I post informational threads on interesting Web3 projects. If you would like to access more information about the guests, please see the episode description.